Hi everyone, my name's Maggie Thompson, and today I'm going to be talking about women in leadership and overcoming the challenges of gender bias in the workplace. I wanted to give you guys a little overview of what I'm going to be discussing today. Today I'm going to talk about women in the workplace, a little about the wage gap, gender bias and what it is, challenges and barriers that women face and the resulting consequences. Next, I found a Fortune article about PricewaterhouseCoopers maternity leave policy that I found very interesting. I also found an arising case study that I'm going to discuss. And lastly, forward and upward, and how if women change their attitudes in the workplace, they can overcome gender bias and advance just as quickly as men. For women in the workplace, I thought it was very important to understand the data and statistics. So I looked up the numbers and percentages according to the United States Department of Labor Women's Bureau. Currently, 57% of women participate in the workforce. Of this 57%, 26% hold mathematical or computer-related occupations. I found this interesting just because one of my undergraduate degrees was in a computer-related field, and I didn't realize exactly how much of a minority I was until I read that statistic. Next, only 12.8% of female veterans participate in the labor force, which I found to be extremely low. But surprisingly, 70% of women with children under the age of 18 are in the labor force, which I thought was very good. However, women are still classified as a minority in the workplace, and because women are classified as a minority, there can be glass ceilings and walls, stereotyping, and prejudice. But before I touch on that, I thought it was important to mention as well that men and women are genetically made up differently, which means that they have different leadership styles, but both are effective. Neither a man nor a woman is a better leader than the other just because of their differing leadership styles. However, many people don't realize that, and women are still facing glass ceilings and walls, which are invisible barriers that separate minorities from moving vertically or horizontally in an organization. And this is due to women being stereotyped. And a stereotype is to assign an identical characteristic to any people in a group regardless of the actual variation among members of the group. Many women are stereotyped as emotional or that they talk too much, and many people think that this causes them to be an unfit leader. But this is where prejudice comes into play, where people think that different is deficient when it's not. And this just goes back to just because a woman is different than a man, it doesn't mean that they're any less capable of performing a task. This is definitely where gender bias comes into play, and people are very biased against women in some industries. However, once that gender bias is overcome, women can move into top executive positions and be just as beneficial and effective as a man in leadership as well. I wanted to include a graphic of the wage gap just because I think it's very important to point out that although there is some talk about there not really being a wage gap in the United States anymore, it is still very much present. And I've seen it in my own family as well, with people in my family getting paid thousands of dollars less if they are female. And I just think that is very unfortunate. And as you can see from this graphic, the United States is still 7th when it comes to having a large pay gap. And I just think this is important just to highlight that there is still gender bias and we need to increase diversity, because when we do increase diversity, I think people will be more accepting of women in the workplace, and hopefully that will cause the wage gap to decrease significantly. And hopefully once we get to almost maximum diversity between men and women in the workplace, we will experience a wage gap no longer. Gender bias is when one gender is preferred or treated better than the other gender. Gender bias can be direct or indirect. An employer can outwardly display his or her bias by having less promotional opportunities for one gender compared to the other. This is just one example of direct gender bias. Gender bias, however, is most commonly indirect. Oftentimes, employers do not even realize that they are being biased. To them, they're sticking to the status quo or the old ways of how things used to be done. Because these old ways have worked for such a long time, they believe they're earning the revenues they need to be, and they are reluctant to notice that they are being biased against one gender. For example, an indirect way employers are gender biased is not offering women the option to take enough leave or be a part-time employee or partner when they are in their childbearing years. A way gender bias can be overcome is by putting together a committee that is gender balanced and possibly includes a gender diversity coach to examine your current workplace and the way it works. Surveys could be sent out to men and women that ask important questions such as, do you feel valued? Or do you feel as though men have an unfair advantage over women? After gathering the research, it can be put into statistical format and presented to the workplace. Asking questions will appeal to women's emotional side, and the presentation of the data in statistical format will appeal to men's data and analytical side. Once the data is presented, the gender coach needs to take action. He or she needs to put together softer training seminars that will also appeal to men. This may be difficult, but it will definitely be worth it at the end. The leader and the coach must take charge and start a lengthy process towards eliminating gender bias in the workplace. Gender bias in the workplace can be overcome as long as there is a strong leader that is ready and willing to make some type of change. There are definitely stages of awareness that every leader must be aware of in order to make such changes. The stages of awareness are as follows: denial, acknowledgement, frustration, and partnership or congruence. At first, the employees in the workplace may be in denial that there is any gender bias because there is either an old school mentality or a feminist mentality present in the workplace. A strong leader must be able to help his or her employees overcome the denial and help them acknowledge the bias. Eventually, many people will be on board with the change, but after some time, people may become frustrated with the process and revert to their old way of thinking. In fact, those who revert to their old ways of thinking may even develop new gender bias that was not there to begin with. However, if the leader is strong and the employees are patient through the process, gender bias could be overcome within that specific workplace. After gender bias is diminished in the workplace, more opportunities for growth, both individually and company-wide, will present themselves. Being a woman, I can attest to the fact that there are many challenges and barriers that women face in the workplace daily. Most of these challenges are due to gender bias in the workplace. An example of one challenge that women face in the workplace is having to choose between work and a family. This is a structural barrier, your biological clock versus your professional clock. Many men criticize women for wanting it all. They want a family, but they also want to work. Many companies that are not family friendly will often lose a woman during her childbearing years, and this woman will show up in a more family friendly company years later. Another barrier that women face is when top executive leaders say, but women don't want the top jobs, so why force it? This is a false way of thinking, but it is in fact why many women do not get promoted. It's not that women will not perform the necessary duties of a top leader, such as travel, relocate, or work around the clock. It's that they need to have a say and negotiate the who, what, when, where, and why of those terms and conditions. Women need to have flexibility. They need to have a say in what they're doing. But because many top leaders are not willing to give women the flexibility they need, they just assume women don't want the positions, and that's very wrong. In fact, I think it's the top leaders that need to be more flexible, possibly even suggest working from home time to time to let the women have more flexibility during their childbearing years. As long as the women feel as though they are having a say, they'll be more willing to compete for a top executive job. Lastly, I think the biggest issue facing women is that some people are reluctant to see the issue at all. In fact, some top executive women don't even see the most pressing issues facing women in the workplace today. Some of these top executive women think that they had the same struggles as those beneath them, so why not let others struggle as well? This would be classified as an attitudinal barrier. To combat these issues, I think one should form a task force, make recommendations, institute new ideas, policies, or even send out surveys to employee in regards to issues. Gender is a fact of life. It's been with us for millions of years and it's ever changing. Being stagnant will not resolve any of the issues. Leaders must be proactive and combat gender based bias daily. Because of the lack of gender diversity and the amount of gender bias and challenges and barriers that women face in the workplace, there are resulting consequences. These consequences can be individual, organizational, or societal. For individual, there's the opt-out trend, and this is when women feel as though they aren't valued or they aren't going to get anywhere in a company, so instead of trying to work their way up, they just opt out of the company and go somewhere where they feel as though they're contributing and more appreciated. So the opt-out trend definitely leads to a higher turnover rate, which could cause consequences not only for the woman herself, but for the organization as well. The higher turnover rate affects many things financially, including profits. The organizational consequences, the organization is really, missing out on untapped potential. They're missing out on ideas and different projects and anything else that a woman can bring to the table. Women aren't getting promoted as much, so they're not obtaining those high top executive level jobs, which again, the organizational consequences can trickle down into the individual consequences. And then gender inequality is definitely growing in the organizations around the nation as well, I believe. For the societal consequences, when you have more females leaving companies and not being top executives, we have less females being role models, and when we have females giving up and opting out, we have less people challenging these stereotypes about women. And of course, when you're not challenging the stereotypes and not fighting against those stereotypes, people are still going to be stuck in their ways, stick to the status quo, and the wage gap might grow as well. So I think it's very important that women realize that nothing is impossible. In fact, it is possible, and they need to continue to be resilient and fight for what they want in the company. The first article that I found was from Fortune, and it was about PricewaterhouseCoopers and their maternity leave policy. The article that I found was entitled 50 Best Workplaces for Working Parents in 2016. And I know it's a little bit outdated, but PricewaterhouseCoopers is still one of the best places for working parents. And this really caught my attention because one of the challenges and barriers that women face in the workplace that I'm really passionate about would be the work versus family barrier. Just because as a female, I do quote unquote want to have it all. I want to work, but I also want to have a family. And I just think it's very unfortunate that a lot of people criticize or look down upon that. But when I found this article, they wanted to find companies that have flexible scheduling, supportive coworkers, and a company that emphasizes balance in the workplace. So just to give everybody a little bit of background on PricewaterhouseCoopers, their headquarters location is in New York City, and as of 2016, they had 45,428 employees. So a lot of people do not get a lot of paid maternity leave or a lot of time to take with their newborn. However, PricewaterhouseCoopers gives maternity and paternity leave almost on the same level. Both the mother and the father are granted 130 days of business day leave after the child is born. For mothers, they get a full paid 75 days, and fathers get 30 days of full paid. And even after an adoption, mothers and fathers are given 130 days of leave. which I thought was fantastic as well. I also thought it was very important that childcare costs reimbursement if there's work travel or if you're working late. And also, I thought this was the biggest thing was the ability to be a part-time partner while raising a family. And I think this is very important for women because many times when women go on maternity leave, they are afraid that their boss will replace them or they will lose their job. But PricewaterhouseCoopers gives both mothers and fathers the ability to be a part-time partner, work at home, just to make sure they do have that job security. And this is very important because that does lead to less turnover and higher profits for the company as well. So I can definitely see why in 2016 this was the number one company for working parents to work at. So I definitely think in the future, I personally will want to look for, employment like this, and I hope that a lot of other companies start to follow the trend that PricewaterhouseCoopers has kind of set and give mothers and fathers both ample amount of maternity and paternity leave in the future. Gender diversity in the workplace is an ever-growing issue in today's society. Some companies are trying to overcome this internal obstacle while others are remaining stagnant in regards to the issue. Horizon, an Australian freight company, realized the gender diversity issue that was present within not only their company, but also almost every company worldwide. Horizon decided to take action. They realized that gender diversity is not an issue that can be brushed under the carpet for a later time. They saw gender diversity as such a pressing issue that they took almost immediate action many years ago and are still putting initiatives and programs in place today in the hopes to remedy this problem. Horizon is a company based out of Australia, and nearly 4 years ago they noticed that although they were more gender diverse than most companies, they were really lacking a strong female presence in the company. In fact, only 13% of their employees were female. Lance Hawkridge acknowledged this issue and stated, "To achieve our goal, a diverse company such as ours needs a diverse workforce. Only then will we unleash our full potential and become the world-leading transport company we aspire to be." Hawkridge acknowledged that due to the lack of female presence internally, the company as a whole was missing untapped ideas, opinions, and potential. He also acknowledged that his field of work has historically been primarily male. However, he states, "We can't continue to blame the industry for why our female numbers are so low." I think this shows that Mr. Hawkridge was aware of the issue of gender diversity, and he's aware that he must accept some of the responsibility for that imbalance and change his actions and teach others new ways. Horizon is committed to workforce diversity now. The transformation began in 2011 when Horizon implemented a diversity board and established measurable objectives for gender diversity. The board's first order of business was to ensure that they helped those within the company establish an in-depth understanding of gender and diversity. Since its beginning, the Diversity Council has since disseminated and transferred accountability for continuing the diversity agenda to Horizon's executive leadership team. The current diversity plans are tailored to each functional leadership team. The goals of the leadership team are to ultimately address unconscious bias, promote flexible work options, have equitable recruitment targets, and develop opportunities, among others. Along with this initiative, Horizon has also adopted new diversity initiatives that include the Australian National Committee for United Nations Women, Male Champions for Change, CEO Office Rotation, Senior Development Program, Transition to Operations Program, Mentoring Program, Networking Opportunities, Horizon Women's Conference, and Annual International Women's Day Business Lunch. The results of these initiatives were astounding. The key improvements include a jump in female participation in senior management from 12% to 26% between March 2012 and 2013, an increase from 29% to 33% in women in middle management, and a decrease in female employee turnover rates from 12% to 7.2%. From these staggering facts, it's clear that Horizon has made diversity an integral part of their business strategy. In fact, Horizon was very proud to be one of only 16 organizations in Australia to receive a green light from Women on Board in 2013. It is amazing that with a little hard work and determination and education, strides against large issues such as gender diversity are starting to be resolved. While reading the case study, a few things really did catch my attention. While reading about the male champions for change, the article mentioned that the top 200 ASX listed companies, most of them were predominantly run by men, and ASX is the Australian Securities Exchange Commission. So most of these companies were predominantly run by men, with females making up only 10% of each company's workforce on average. This caught my attention because Horizon had an employment rate of 13% for females. I think this speaks a lot to Horizon's internal and external awareness. Even though the percentage of females working for the company was higher than average, the CEO and the leadership team still recognized the importance of having an even stronger diversity within the workplace. Secondly, I was very impressed that Horizon noticed the need for some women to have a mentor and really catered to that need with their mentoring program. Some women need to confide in others, and they need to feel as though they have emotional support. The mentoring program that Horizon has put in place ensures that the female employee has support in almost all areas of her work life. Their mentoring program is a self-paced 12-week program that includes mentoring cycles with male and female mentors, one-on-one mentoring with internal executive mentors, and one-on-one mentoring with external executive mentors. I thought that this mentoring program was also interesting because a female's mentoring circle is with males and females. This showed me that gender balance really is important to this company. It is important for a female to be mentored by both males and females, in my opinion. Females need the emotional support from other females, while they need tough love support from males. I think this mentoring program might be, in my opinion, one of the best initiatives this company has made. I was also surprised that Horizon was able to notice this issue and actually did something to help remedy it. I was surprised because this company is 87% male. With such a large part of the workforce being male, I would have assumed that the gender diversity issue would have gone unnoticed. I would have assumed that most men would think, we don't have a problem, or women don't care, so why should we, or even, we're doing fine. However, it seems as though most men in this company do not think this way. In 2011, there seemed to be a step past denial and acceptance company-wide there was an issue. Although there might be frustration when it comes to this change, the company is making great strides. Therefore, I believe that there is not much frustration anymore. In fact, it seems as though they are in the partnership congruence phase of the stages of awareness that I discussed earlier. I say this because they are speaking on ongoing initiatives that they are retaining more females within their company. Overall, I'm very impressed with the way this company is handling this issue and moving towards a more gender diverse workforce. While some companies remain stagnant when it comes to large issues such as gender diversity, some companies are making impressive strides towards the future. They are taking initiative and investing in educational development. We can only hope that more companies will make greater strides in the future. I wanted to include this YouTube video because I found it very interesting and felt as though some of you might as well. During this video, I had 4 big takeaways that I felt were useful and beneficial to myself or another woman that wants to move forward and upward in a company. First off, I thought it was very valuable when she talks about having to define success for yourself. This is where women often are stuck in a rut doing things that others think is the best for them and their success. By being able to define success by oneself, one's able to identify their own goals and recognize the best way to achieve those goals based on their own personality or characteristics. Listening to oneself will get you farther in life than listening to others who often give the wrong advice. To be able to define what success means to you takes confidence and self-trust. Next, I think it's important that women must learn to be resilient. The path to success is not a straight line. There'll be obstacles in your way and bumps in the road that make you feel uncomfortable, There may be times when no one's listening to you, and there may be times when the path to success is taking longer than expected. However, women must be persistent in what they want, remain resilient through the process, and speak up for themselves. I previously read the book Leadership in the Sexes, and it mentioned that women will often bring up an idea or valid opinion, but only mention it once if they feel as though they were not heard. In this case, women need to learn to bring up their idea or opinion an hour later, a day later, even a week later. Be resilient and get yourself noticed. I also thought it was important when the author talked about how women often experience higher highs and lower lows than men do. This is because they tend to be more emotional, which is genetic. However, this can lead to some problems. Many years ago, the average age for women to be depressed for the first time was 28. Recently, that number has dropped drastically, and the age for women to be depressed for the first time is now 14. As we can see, emotions play a major role in the way that females operate and how they succeed or don't succeed in the workplace. If a woman does not feel as though she's being valued enough, she tends to feel low, and sometimes feeling low for an extended period of time can cause the woman to plan her exit approach and leave the company for good. Because of the lack of gender intelligence, diversity, and balance in the workplace, the woman experienced her lows, and the company lost a woman who could have potentially brought valuable ideas into the workplace. And lastly, I think it's important for a woman to define the circumstances that are unique to her that she feels will help her succeed. These type of circumstances can range from whom she confides in to who she feels comfortable as her mentor to who she relies on to empower her in certain situations. If a woman does not feel comfortable in her certain situation or circumstance, more often than not her creativity and production could decrease or come to a standstill altogether. These were just 4 of my big takeaways from this video, but hopefully if you take the time to watch the short 5-minute video, you too will have takeaways that you can apply to your daily life as well. Thank you guys for bearing with me through my presentation. I hope you guys enjoyed it and learned something about gender bias and the workplace, as did I. Again, thank you guys so much.